Chapter 6, Part 5 of the Legends of the Jews, Volume 1. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by M.L. Cohen, Cleveland, Ohio, July 2007. Legends of the Jews, Volume 1. By Rabbi Louis Ginzberg. Jacob pursued by Eliphaz and Esau. When Jacob went away to go to Haran, Esau called his son Eliphaz, and secretly spoke unto him, saying, Now hasten, take thy sword in thy hand, and pursue Jacob, and pass before him in the road, and lurk for him, and slay him with thy sword in one of the mountains, and take all belonging unto him, and come back. And Eliphaz was dexterous and expert with the bow, as his father had taught him, and he was a noted hunter in the field and a valiant man. And Eliphaz did as his father had commanded him. And Eliphaz was at that time 13 years old. And he arose and went and took 10 of his mother's brothers with him, and pursued Jacob. And he followed Jacob closely, and when he overtook him, he lay in ambush for him on the borders of the land of Canaan, opposite to the city of Shechem. And Jacob saw Eliphaz and his men pursuing after him, and Jacob stood in the place in which he was going in order to know what it was, for he did not understand their purpose. Eliphaz drew his sword and went on advancing, he and his men, towards Jacob. And Jacob said unto them, Wherefore have ye come hither, and why do you pursue with your swords? Eliphaz came near to Jacob and answered him as follows, Thus did my father command me, and now therefore I will not deviate from the orders which my father gave me. And when Jacob saw that Esau had impressed his command urgently upon Eliphaz, he approached and supplicated Eliphaz and his men, saying, Behold, all that I have, and that which my father and mother gave unto me, that take unto thee, and go from me, and do not slay me, and may this thing that thou wilt do with me be accounted unto thee as righteousness. And the Lord caused Jacob to find favor in the sight of Eliphaz and his men, and they hearkened to the voice of Jacob, and they did not put him to death, but took all his belongings, together with the silver and gold he had brought with him from Beersheba. They left him nothing. When Eliphaz and his men returned to Esau, and told him all that had happened to them with Jacob, he was wroth with his son Eliphaz and with his men, because they had not put Jacob to death. And they answered and said unto Esau, Because Jacob supplicated us in this matter not to slay him, our pity was moved toward him, and we took all belonging to him, and we came back. Esau then took all the silver and gold which Eliphaz had taken from Jacob, and he put them by in his house. Nevertheless, Esau did not give up the hope of intercepting Jacob on his flight and slaying him. He pursued him, and with his men occupied the road along which he had to journey to Haran. There a great miracle happened to Jacob. When he observed what Esau's intention was, he turned off toward the Jordan River, and, with his eyes directed to God, he cleft the waters with his wanderer's staff, and succeeded in crossing to the other side. But Esau was not to be deterred. He kept up the pursuit, and reached the hot springs at Baaris before his brother, who had to pass by there. Jacob, not knowing that Esau was on the watch for him, decided to bathe in the spring, saying, I have neither bread nor other things needful, so I will at least warm my body in the waters of the well. While he was in the bath, Esau occupied every exit, and Jacob would surely have perished in the hot water if the Lord had not caused a miracle to come to pass. A new opening formed of itself, and through it Jacob escaped. Thus were fulfilled the words, When thou passest through the waters, I will be with thee. When thou walkest through the fire, thou shalt not be burnt. For Jacob was saved from the waters of the Jordan, and from the fire of the hot spring. At the same time with Jacob, a rider, leaving his horse and his clothes on the shore, had stepped into the river to cool off, but he was overwhelmed by the waves, and he met his death. Jacob put on the dead man's clothes, mounted his horse, and went off. It was a lucky chance, for Eliphaz had stripped him of everything, even his clothes, and the miracle of the river had happened only that he might not be forced to appear naked among men. Though Jacob was robbed of all his possessions, his courage did not fail him. He said, "Should I lose hope in my Creator? I set my eyes upon the merits of my fathers. For the sake of them the Lord will give me his aid." And God said, "Jacob, thou puttest thy trust in the merits of thy fathers. Therefore I will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber, yea, still more. While a keeper watcheth only by day as a rule, and sleepeth by night, I will guard thee day and night. For behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord will keep thee from all evil, from Esau as well as Laban. He will keep thy soul, that the angel of death do thee no hurt. He will keep thy going out and thy coming in. He will support thee now thou art leaving Canaan, and when thou returnest to Canaan." Jacob was reluctant to leave the Holy Land before he received direct permission from God. "My parents," he reflected, "bade me go forth and sojourn outside of the land, but who knows whether it be the will of God that I do as they say, and beget children outside of the Holy Land?" Accordingly, he betook himself to Beersheba. There, where the Lord had given permission to Isaac to depart from Canaan and go to Philistia, he would learn the will of the Lord concerning himself. He did not follow the example of his father and grandfather and take refuge with Abimelech, because he feared the king might force him also into a covenant, and make it impossible for his descendants of many generations to take possession of the Philistine land. Nor could he stay at home, because of his fear that Esau might wrest the birthright and blessing from him, and to that he would not and could not agree. He was as little disposed to take up the combat with Esau, for he knew the truth of the maxim, quote, "He who courts danger will be overcome by it. He who avoids danger will overcome it." Both Abraham and Isaac had lived according to this rule. His grandfather had fled from Nimrod, and his father had gone away from the Philistines. The Legends of the Jews, Volume 1, by Rabbi Louis Ginzberg. The Day of Miracles. Jacob's journey to Haran was a succession of miracles. The first of the 5 that befell for his sake in the course of it was that the sun sank while Jacob was passing Mount Moriah, though it was high noon at the time. He was following the spring that appeared whenever the patriarchs went or settled. It accompanied Jacob from Beersheba to Mount Moriah, a 2 days' journey. When he arrived at the holy hill, the Lord said to him, "Jacob, thou hast bread in thy wallet, and the spring of waters is nearby to quench thy thirst. Thus thou hast food and drink, and here thou canst lodge for the night." But Jacob replied, "The sun has barely passed the 5th of its 12-day stages. Why should I lie down to sleep at so unseemly an hour?" But then Jacob perceived that the sun was about to sink, and he prepared to make ready his bed. It was the divine purpose not to let Jacob pass the site of the future temple without stopping. He was to tarry there at least one night. Also, God desired to appear unto Jacob, and he shows himself unto his faithful ones only at night. At the same time, Jacob was saved from the pursuit of Esau, who had to desist on account of the premature darkness. Jacob took 12 stones from the altar on which his father Isaac had lain bound as a sacrifice, and he said, "It was the purpose of God to let 12 tribes arise, but they have not been begotten by Abraham or Isaac. If now these 12 stones will unite into a single one, then I shall know for a certainty that I am destined to become the father of the 12 tribes." At this time the second miracle came to pass. The 12 stones joined themselves together and made one, which he put under his head, and at once it became soft and downy like a pillow. It was well that he had a comfortable couch. He was in great need of rest, for it was the first night in 14 years that he did not keep vigil. During all those years passed in Eber's house of learning, he had devoted the nights to study. And for 20 years to come he was not to sleep, for while he was with his uncle Laban, he spent all the night and every night reciting the Psalms. On the whole, it was a night of marvels. He dreamed a dream in which the course of the world's history was unfolded to him. On a ladder set up on the earth, with the top of it reaching to heaven, he beheld the two angels who had been sent to Sodom. For 138 years they had been banished from the celestial regions, because they had betrayed their secret mission to Lot. They had accompanied Jacob from his father's house thither, and now they were ascending heavenward. When they arrived there, he heard them call the other angels and say, "Come ye, and see the countenance of the pious Jacob, whose likeness appears on the divine throne, ye who yearned long to see it." And then he beheld the angels descend from heaven to gaze upon him. He also saw the angels of the four kingdoms ascending the ladder. The angel of Babylon mounted 70 rounds, the angel of Media 52, that of Greece 180, and that of Edom mounted very high, saying, "I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, I will be like the Most High." And Jacob heard a voice remonstrating, "Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the uttermost parts of the pit." God himself reproved Edom, saying, "Though thou mount on high as the eagle, and though thy nest be set among the stars, I will bring thee down from thence." Furthermore, God showed unto Jacob the revelation at Mount Sinai, the translation of Elijah, the temple and its glory and its spoliation, Nebuchadnezzar's attempt to burn the 3 holy children in the fiery furnace, and Daniel's encounter with Bel. In this, the first prophetic dream dreamed by Jacob, God made him the promise that the land upon which he was lying would be given to him. But the land he lay upon was the whole of Palestine, which God had folded together and put under him. And, the promise continued, thy seed will be like unto the dust of the earth. As the earth survives all things, so thy children will survive all the nations of the earth. But as the earth is trodden upon by all, so thy children, when they commit trespasses, will be trodden upon by the nations of the earth. And furthermore, God promised that Jacob should be spread out to the west and to the east, a greater promise than that given to his fathers Abraham and Isaac, to whom he had allotted a limited land. Jacob's was an unbounded possession. From this wondrous dream Jacob awoke with a start of fright on account of the vision he had of the destruction of the temple. He cried out, "How dreadful is this place! This is none other but the house of God, wherein is the gate of heaven through which prayer ascends to him." He took the stone made out of the 12, and set it up for a pillar, and poured oil upon the top of it, which had flowed down from the heaven for him. And God sank this anointed stone unto the abyss, to serve as the center of the earth. The same stone, the Eben Shettiah, that forms the center of the sanctuary, whereon the ineffable name is graven, the knowledge of which makes man master over nature, and over life and death. Jacob cast himself down before the Eben Shettiah, and entreated God to fulfill the promise he had given him, and also he prayed that God grant him honorable sustenance. For God had not mentioned bread to eat and raiment to put on, that Jacob might learn to have faith in the Lord. Then he vowed to give the 10th of all he owned unto God, if he would but grant his petition. Thus Jacob was the first to take a vow upon himself, and the first, too, to separate the tithe from his income. God had promised him almost all that is desirable, but he feared he might forfeit the pledged blessings through his sinfulness, and again he prayed earnestly that God bring him back to his father's house, unimpaired in body, possessions, and knowledge, and guard him in the strange land whither he was going, against idolatry, and immortal life, and bloodshed. His prayer at an end, Jacob set out on his way to Haran, and the third wonder happened. In the twinkling of an eye he arrived at his destination. The earth jumped from Mount Moriah to Haran. A wonder like this God has executed only 4 times in the whole course of history. The first thing to meet his eye in Haran was the well whence the inhabitants drew their supply of water. Although it was a great city, Haran suffered from dearth of water, and therefore the well could not be used by the people free of charge. Jacob's sojourn in the city produced a change. By reason of his meritorious deeds, the water springs were blessed, and the city had water enough for its needs. Jacob saw a number of people by the well, and he questioned them. My brethren, whence be ye? He thus made himself a model for all to follow. A man should be companionable and address others like brothers and friends, and not wait for them to greet him. Each one should strive to be the first to give the salutation of peace, that the angels of peace and compassion may come to meet him. When he was informed that the bystanders hailed from Haran, he made inquiry about the character and vocation of his uncle Laban, and whether they were on terms of friendly intercourse with him. They answered briefly, There is peace between us, but if thou art desirous of inquiring further, here comes Rachel, the daughter of Laban. From her thou canst learn all thou hast a mind to learn. They knew that women liked to talk, wherefore they referred him to Rachel. Jacob found it strange that so many should be standing idle by the well, and he questioned further. Are you day laborers? Then it is too early for you to put by your work. But if you are pasturing your own sheep, why do you not water your flocks and let them feed? They told him they were waiting until all the shepherds brought their flocks thither, and together rolled the stone from the mouth of the well. While he was yet speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for Laban had no sons, and a pest having broken out shortly before among his cattle, so few sheep were left that a maiden like Rachel could easily tend them. Now, when Jacob saw the daughter of his mother's brother approaching, he rolled the great stone from the mouth of the well as easily as a cork is drawn from a bottle, the fourth wonder of this extraordinary day. Jacob's strength was equal to the strength of all the shepherds. With his 2 arms alone, he accomplished what usually requires the united forces of a large assemblage of men. He had been divinely endowed with this supernatural strength on leaving the Holy Land. God had caused the dew of the resurrection to drop down upon him, and his physical strength was so great that even in a combat with the angels he was victorious. The 5th and last wonder of the day was that the water rose from the depths of the well to the very top. There was no need to draw it up, and there it remained all the 20 years that Jacob abode in Haran. End of chapter 6, part 5.